Hi, Justine. Welcome to the Genetic Genius podcast. I'm so excited to have you as a guest today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And so before we dive deep into the cell, let's talk about you and let's get to know you a little bit about your background, what you do, what's your passion, so people can get to know you.
Sure, I would love to share that with you. So, I'm a nutritionist and functional medicine trained. I specialize in cell membrane medicine. I'm also a therapeutic chef, so I have that background as well. I similar to you. And I primarily work with supporting patients that have chronic complex illness. I work with Dr. Bruce Hoffman out of the Hoffman Center in Calgary, Alberta, and also with body bio training clinicians on their product line and also helping them to implement cell membrane medicine into their practice because I think that's the most important place to start.
Yes, we have to start healing at the cell. Otherwise, what's the point? Sounds like you're busy doing lots of great stuff. So I can't wait to find out more about cell membrane medicine. Super exciting. So we're going to be talking all about that today and learning how the body is affected, the foundations, how we can basically that cornerstone of the foundation that the cell is about. So first of all, can you describe to everybody what is the cell membrane?
Every one of the trillions of cells that make up who we are have bilayers. And also important to remember that every organelle within the cell also has lipid bilayers. So there's an outer membrane and an inner membrane. And the outer membrane is primarily composed of phosphatidylcholine, and the inner membrane is primarily composed of the phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylphenylamine, phosphatidylinositol, and phosphatidylserine. So there's four main phospholipids, as well as plasmalogens on the membrane, on the outer and the inner membrane. There's also about a 4-to-1 ratio of essential fatty acids from linoleic acid to alpha linolenic acid. So as you can tell just by this brief explanation that phospholipids and bioactive lipids are two really critical components of supporting cellular.
Love it. Great. So now we have like this great vision of what the cell looks like, and we have this phospholipid bilayer. And so, what role does the cell membrane have in optimal cell function? Why is it so important?
The cell membrane controls the cell. So we used to believe that the nucleus was the control center of the cell containing our DNA, but now we know that it's the membrane that controls everything that happens within the cell. So the significance of that is everything. Everything happens on the membrane. That membrane, the integrity, the structure, the functionality, the fluidity of that membrane is determining how every single organelle within the cell is able to.
So it's like a command center for the cell on the outside of the cell, sending messages out and having a barrier and all of those different types of things that the cell membrane does.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah, great. And so what are there different, we all have different systems in the body, different like hormonal systems, different organ systems. Are the cell membranes different with each cell within each system, or are they very similar in their makeup and function?
They are very similar. Depending on the cell type will determine the level of the quantity of phospholipids that make up both those outer and inner membranes. And all of the organelles within the cell are consistent within every cell in the body for the most part.
Right. Yes. We have a couple areas where they have specialty systems.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we have this cell membrane. So what happens when that cell membrane becomes damaged? What happens to the cell itself? And then what happens to that system where the cell is located or working in, so to speak?
So when the cell membrane is damaged, that's when we see all kinds of dysfunction within the cell leading to chronic illness and disease. So first and foremost, most people are probably familiar with the mitochondria. So if we don't have healthy cell membranes, we're not going to have healthy mitochondrial functioning. And it's really important to remember that the mitochondria is also protected by a lipid bilayer called the cardiolipin. And the main fatty acid within that cardiolipin is actually linoleic acid. So we need to make sure that we are supporting the body with optimal levels of essential fatty acids to even support mitochondrial health. So if the cell membrane is damaged, that is going to impact every single organelle within the cell. That's when toxins can start moving into the cell, embedding themselves into the membrane, impacting receptor sites, and then ultimately impacting the functionality of every single organelle within the cell. So we will look at things like Alzheimer's disease as an example, and the buildup of amyloid plaque. When we know that is a result of the endoplasmic reticulum having excess oxidative stress, which is creating the misfolding of proteins. So I think that helping your audience to understand the significance of cellular health, there is nothing more important than first and foremost starting on a cellular level, because that is everything.
Yeah. That was great explanation. And I really liked how you talked about the mitochondria because they're so key. So let's touch base on that because I know you said, well, most people know. There's people listening all over the world and not everybody has heard of different things. Explain them. So can you explain the function of the mitochondria, why they're so important, and when we have a poor functioning cell, why they're not replicating in a way that provides us energy?
So the mitochondria we can think of as the powerhouse of the cell. Those are our little energy makers, and they produce ATP, which we need ATP to do everything. So when we have unhealthy cells, we often see mitochondrial clumping, we see low mitochondrial numbers, we see low ATP. So we really want to maximize the number of mitochondria, make sure that they're not clumped, and make sure they're making adequate ATP. And again, a lot of that comes down to, I can't talk about cellular health without realizing the importance of nutrition as well, making sure we're getting in lots of phytonutrients, we're getting in adequate protein. But those phospholipids and those bioactive lipids are also those two key players that are going to help to support, again, the membrane, which by default helps to support the mitochondria.
So important. And you also mentioned that when that layer, that cell membrane becomes damaged, then toxins can move from the extracellular fluid inside the cell. And so is that one of the reasons or the root causes of why the chronic disease starts to develop, is because the toxins are going inside the cell and then the cell's not working up to its function, its supreme layer of function?
Yeah, one of the many reasons, right? Because we can also have other things like bacteria and viruses. Lyme disease is a classic example, or mold illness, SIRS, that so many people get diagnosed with. That's mold damaging the membrane and entering the cell and wreaking havoc, creating all kinds of symptoms, an entire laundry list. Yes, absolutely. Now, when we think about phosphatidylcholine specifically, phosphatidylcholine is not only helping to stabilize the membrane and improve the health of every cell in your body, but it also acts as a detoxifying agent. Because PC, if you think about PC, like opening the door of the membrane to allow toxins out, because when you have adequate phosphatidylcholine content on the membrane, there's no room for toxins to embed themselves into the cell. It's like it pushes them out. So I like to use the analogy, like if you had two drunks in the back of your car, it wouldn't matter how many times you washed the outside of your vehicle. It wouldn't matter if you did a detail in the inside of the vehicle. Those two drunks are still in the car. You actually have to open the door in order for those drunks to exit. And that's what PC does in the cell. It really opens that door to allow those toxins to be removed from the cell. And then obviously we rely on our detoxification systems to be able to get them out of the.
Yeah, that's a great analogy and super easy for people to understand. It's so they're seeing this cell functioning, and it almost reminds me of the Gaff junctions in the large intestine. We have these cells that want to stay close together so that nothing leaks through into the bloodstream. So it sounds like that very similar analogy with that phospholipid bilayer and the phosphatidylcholine being so important for that intact and like almost like I have this vision of this like gushy, like yummy little cell. It's like bouncing along, like happy in the blood, in the bloodstream.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, remembering that it's leaky gut or intestinal permeability, leaky blood-brain barrier, well, these are all topple over one.
Yeah. Right. They all lead into one another. They're all synced together and all have similar symptoms too.
Yeah, I think we often forget that the body is a web. Everything is connected to everything else. So we have separated the body into parts because we have cardiologists and endocrinologists and gastroenterologists and neurologists, and we end up treating the body like it's in these separate parts. But we need to remember that it's a web. Everything affects everything.
That's so true. I really like that you said that because we have gotten to this place in medicine where you can't even always go see one person. You're referred out to 20 people when it should be one person should be able to at least identify and recognize the root cause of what's going on instead of being like, I don't know, that's not my specialty, but it's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected. Exactly.
It's all connected. Oh, sorry. What did you say?
I was just going to say that's one of the many reasons why I have so much reverence for Dr. Hoffman's work, because he really does. He works in a 7-layer model, and he's working with all systems, all parts, and there's no stone left unturned. So he's really able to quarterback an individual's health from looking at that 30,000-foot view and seeing everything all together instead of a typical conventional medical doctor. And this is no disrespect at all. There's definitely a time and a place for those specialties. But when we look at root cause medicine and preventative medicine, we want to be working with someone who's able to look at that big whole picture and put all of the pieces of the puzzle together.
So true. So true. And that perspective is so important for us to see how the cells are working in all the systems. Are there certain systems that are affected way deeper that were the original cause of what's going on? And then we can actually see, like how you said, that kind of like bird's eye perspective. And from there, we're able to have a different perspective of what the patient will need. It's, having that's the holistic. And like you said, it's like almost like a medicine, and it does, like you said, have a particular place, but it's become so compartmentalized and segmented that I think patients aren't getting the care that they need anymore. It's just so overwhelming for them to have to go to so many different places to go from doctor to doctor to try to figure out what's going on. And then actually there's no solution. It's like the endless road to no solution, which happens with many chronic disease patients, as you know.
It's because and again, there's no disrespect, but it's because they're trained to address a symptom or, and then attach a drug to that symptom or disease drug. And so when we see people like mast cell activation syndrome is a perfect example of that these people come in with so many different symptom manifestations with so many different organ systems. So now these doctors that are only trained to look at symptom pharmaceutical, they don't know what to do with these patients. So they tell them that it's in their head. You need to go to see a psychiatrist because I don't know how to help you. It's fortunately, we have this movement where we have medical doctors that are really wanting to implement root cause medicine and totally revamp that whole training that they received in medical school.
Right.
So that we can actually help people get well.
Exactly. Yeah. That's one thing I really liked about the functional medicine program is it's a mix. Like a naturopathic medical school, it's very similar model, but it's nice to be doing the functional medicine training because you're in a mix of all different walks of life, so to speak, medical doctors, nutritionists, et cetera, naturopathic physicians. So it's where I like that community aspect of it, which is different for sure.
Yeah. No, it's a really great program. I enjoyed it as well.
Okay, so when we talked about being in that chronic disease state, and you have this cell that then the membrane is actually damaged, are there specific? I know that you work a lot with it, with cognitive and neurological aspects. What's the good way to describe this? How downstream is that for the cell membrane? Does that original, let's say someone is starting to go through some cell membrane damage. And so is that seen pretty quickly in the neurological and cognitive area of the brain and the nervous system? Or is it something that kind of accumulates over time? Do you know what I mean? Because I see a lot of patients that have this neurological damage, and they don't even recognize some of the symptoms in the beginning because they're so like vague, or they're, like you said, they're hard to diagnose. Are there, do you see that a lot in your practice where someone is slow, it's been working like up over time?
I think with most chronic illnesses and diseases, they don't happen overnight. These take
Right.
decades to
Yeah.
develop. So it's in a slow accumulation of assault after assault. And just to bring in another analogy, I always, with my clients, use the analogy of a bathtub. And over the course of your life, you're turning on that faucet. And every time you have a chemical exposure, or you're exposed to EMFs, or you have this traumatic brain injury, whatever it may be, you're turning on that faucet. And over the course of your life, the water is becoming higher and higher. And eventually you get to the brim of the bathtub and it leaks over. And it's that leaking over that creates all the symptoms that we experience that are related to chronic illness and disease. So the goal, of course, is to unplug the bathtub,
Right.
let go of all those assaults over the course of lifetime, clean up our environment, make sure we're sleeping well, make sure that we're eating pristine, make sure we're getting in adequate nutrients so that we have that biochemistry bank account, because biochemistry takes, that it's withdrawing all the time. And so if we're not building that back up nutritionally and making sure we're not getting toxic exposures, we're not living in an electromagnetic field environment 24/7, we're sleeping, all of those things help to lower the water in the tub. So just to answer your question, no, it doesn't happen in a week or 2 weeks or a few months. I think there's some rare incidences where someone will have a really severe toxic exposure, and then you can see 6 months or 8 months down the road that they develop Parkinson's disease or ALS. But I think that's probably more rare. I think what's common is the accumulation over the course of age, everything slows down. We have, speaking of the membrane, we have a decreased ability to synthesize phospholipids. We have a decreased ability to absorb and assimilate nutrients. So all of these, there's the 9 hallmarks of aging, and all of those 9 areas end up getting impacted, which is what leads to aging and therefore disease.
Yeah, so true. And I love the analogy of the bathtub. I use something similar with my patients as a bucket model. And what I loved about the bathtub model is like you're floating in this kind of bathwater of toxicity. And you have to be able to clean that out. And I think that's a great kind of like segue into talking more about how do we keep the cell membrane so happy and active and healthy. So you talked a little bit about the foundations. Let's break those down a little bit. So what are those specific foundations that are great for supporting and protecting the cell membrane? I know you mentioned the phosphatidylcholine, but what about some of the other aspects that from that foundation, like you said, with sleep and things like that?
Well, first of all, let's talk about what the cell needs. So we talked about the phospholipids, not just the choline. Yes, we need phosphatidylcholine, that's our primary phospholipid, but we also need phosphatidylethylalamine, we need phosphatidylinositol, and then to a lesser extent, we need that phosphatidylserine. But I first want to talk about the importance of those essential fatty acids. So this is often missed because we hear so much conversation around healthy fats, and healthy fats are usually referenced as coconut oil or macadamia nuts or avocados or olive oil. But what is consistent with all of those fats and oils that are referenced? They're all made in the body when we provide our body with the essential fatty acids. So we have 2 essential fatty acids, one being linoleic acid, which we need in a higher quantity than alpha linolenic acid. So LA and ALA or omega-6 and omega-3 are our 2 essential fatty acids. And those 2 essential fatty acids make every other fatty acid in the entire body. So even when we look at saturated fats, which a lot of emphasis if you're following a ketogenic diet, or there's all kinds of these dogmatic dietary templates that people follow, and there's massive emphasis on some of them on saturated fats, but we need to remember our body makes saturated fats. When
Right.
we add the essential fatty acids and have adequate amino acids, there's no problem. We can make those saturated fats. So my goal with patients is first and foremost, or patients when they're coming from a physician, is always to make sure that we focus first and foremost on the essential fatty acids. And I always use the Body Bio Balance oil because I trust that brand. I know that it's tested for oxidation, it's cold pressed, no oxygen is used in the process of it. It's tested for plasticides. It is the cleanest, purest, most unadulterated essential fatty acid blend that I have been able to find. So I really like everyone to use that. Of course, I educate around the importance of keeping polyunsaturated fats safe from heat, from light, from oxygen. So you're never cooking with that. You're never using it on even hot food. You want to make sure that your food cools down before adding it. You're keeping it in the fridge or the freezer, and you're using it up relatively quickly after opening it. I usually say 30 to 60 days max. So that's most important. We want to liberally provide the body with these essential fatty acids so we can build all the other fatty acids needed in the body. And then gram for gram, we're looking at about a 4-to-1 ratio of linoleic acid to alpha linolenic acid. So really important to help support the cells from that standpoint too. And then when we look at the phospholipids, remembering that those phospholipid tails, so phospholipid has a glycerol backbone and those phospholipid tails, and those are made by the fatty acids that we ingest. If you're going to ingest a whole bunch of saturated fat, you're going to have rigid, stiff fatty acid tails. But when we ingest those essential fatty acids, those polyunsaturated fats, we have nice, fluid, flexible fatty acid tails. So again, you're never going to hurt anybody using phospholipids and bioactive lipids. So it is the safest form of medicine, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you're going to have really expensive salad dressing, or you're going to burn, you're going to burn the fatty acids as fuel. But aside from that, you can't really overdo it. And then we have the phospholipids, and I also recommend Body Bio's phospholipid complex because it has the highest levels of phospholipids out there than any other product. It has all of the phospholipids, so you're not just giving phosphatidylcholine, because if you give just phosphatidylcholine, you are just supporting. But what about the inner membrane? You've got to make sure that we're also providing those phospholipids to support the inner membrane as well. So I love that product. I have everything that I work with on it, and liberally dosing that. You see, again, I work a lot with people that have chronic complex illness. I'm also somebody that has suffered with chronic complex illness for as long as I can remember. And that product has changed the trajectory of my health. So I've personally been able to experience the power of cell membrane medicine. And therefore, it is so easy to talk about it with the patients that I work with, because I've experienced how powerful both essential fatty acids and phospholipids. I feel that above and beyond any other supplement out there, because that's the foundation.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And when we are able to relate to our clients or patients in a way, when it's something that we've experienced, it's very empowering for them, right? Where they have this actual connection. Oh gosh, I can see how it changed you. And that story is how we connect with our patients and clients.
100%. Yeah, for sure. And I always like to remind people as well that I remember when I first started taking NAD, I felt this immediate lift in my energy levels. And I remember my best friend saying the same thing. And we thought, this is really crazy. This one supplement has all of a sudden we feel like I'm an Energizer bunny.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be those supplements that people notice an immediate improvement upon taking. But I think with the phospholipids and the bioactive lipids, we have to remember this is a long game. Again, we are repairing trillions of cells in the body that make up. So this is not about taking something for a week and expecting to all of a sudden have your brain back online. And I think that can happen for some people that have really low acetylcholine, because we know that phosphatidylcholine is a precursor to acetylcholine.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have adequate levels of acetylcholine, you're going to see a slip in your memory and your focus and your concentration and your recall. So in that group of people, we do see them say, I took the phosphatidylcholine and my brain turned on.
Yeah.
But I think for the majority of people, you're going to see it's a longer game. You got to really stay at it for 6 months to a year at probably a higher therapeutic dose to really help to heal. And then we can scale back and just maintain. And I always think that these products are products you want to stay on for your lifetime.
Right. To really protect the cell. And that's really important. I like that you said that too, that a lot of our natural medicine or supplements, you don't always feel them right away. So people give up, right? It's wait, you have to think about what it's doing inside the body, what the damage was. Like first, number one, what the damage was, how toxic are you or were you? And then you're like, we have to clean you out. Like you said, we got to get the bathtub running or opening up. And that's like the steps. So it's like some people, like you said, will have that overnight, oh my gosh, I feel immediately better. But then other people, it just takes longer. It really depends on the chronic state that they're coming in. So it's great to encourage them that you will feel better. Just stick with it.
And I think too, just reminding them that again, as we age, everything slips as we age, why we age. And so remembering that we can take some of these anti-aging conversation is rampant. And if we can take some of these products that are directly improving the aging process by directly impacting our cells and how our cells age, what else would you want to be on?
Totally. Yes. Yeah. It's a longevity fats, which is really key. So you talked about that foundation of essential fatty acids, which is really key because that's kind of like our whole almost discussion today is really talking about how important that cell membrane is. What are some of those other foundations that impact the function of the cell membrane or actually like the protection, like you said, with that anti-aging piece?
So we need lots and lots of phytonutrients, right? We need lots and lots of colorful plant foods, whole, organically grown, properly prepared. That's a piece that I think a lot of people miss. We get broccoli or Brussels sprouts, and then we fry them or we roast them until they are all caramelized and have all kinds
Black.
of glycated end products that are damaging to the cell. So I teach people how to properly prepare food. I teach people about how to incorporate a menu with a breakfast, lunch, and dinner that is rich in vitamin, rich in high quality animal protein, because we also need that protein to help build healthy cells and healthy bodies. And so I recommend 6 to 9 cups of phytonutrient rich foods every day, coming from all 6 color groups, which you know this if you did IFM: red, orange, yellow, blue, black, purple, white, tan, brown, and green. And each one of those color groups plays a really specific role in the body. So we don't only want to be eating
green, right? Yeah.
Because we're following a ketogenic diet. We want to be getting in all of those colors and all of those colors every day, because we also know that those colors help to support our microbiome, and the variety helps to support our microbiome. Right. So now we're improving our gut health, and then we're supporting our brain health, and we're supporting every single cell in our body.
Love the rainbow. I love it. And I do the same thing. I talk to my patients about eating those 6 to 9 servings a day. And they're like, I don't know, this is your daily intake. and it's like the eyes like gonna roll back in their head. Let's break it down. Let's make it simple and start one meal at a time.
I think it is challenging for people, which is why I recommend removing, at least for 3 to 6 months, removing the grains and the beans and the legumes and a lot of those foods that end up filling our plate. And then you don't have a lot of room for vegetables. But when you take it all out, it's a lot easier to get in 2 cups of vegetables per meal or 3 cups of vegetables per meal when you're not filling your plate with a bunch of rice or quinoa or lentil soup. So
yeah, especially in that chronic disease state where grains can be a real inflammatory aspect of food.
Yeah, and moldy, lots of problems with them for sure.
Yeah, totally. And we talked about those amazing foods, the for filled with the rainbow of color to help the cell membrane. And you can just see that kind of like swimming through the body, like activating all the cells. Let's talk about some other supplements. Are there other key vitamins and minerals that are important to the cell membrane or the cell function?
Yes, there are lots. So when it comes to nutrient therapy, I usually recommend, so I love evening primrose oil because again, we have linoleic acid. And remind me to touch back on this because I do want to differentiate for people the difference between a pure, unadulterated raw form and what they're going to find in a package, a box, a bag in the grocery store. So that we definitely want to stay away from those. But when we look at LA, that goes down into GLA and then dihomogamma-linoleic acid, and that makes prostaglandins, right? That's how we have a healthy functioning immune system. Often I like to give a little bit of GLA and just top up if they're not converting that LA to GLA quite adequately, or maybe not getting quite enough LA to do that conversion. I think that depending on the patient, I'm very careful about recommending fish oil, but to some people I do. If their EP and DHA is low, I prefer them to eat wild caught salmon a week and get it from a whole food form versus fish oil supplementation. But for some people, we do need to top up their fish oil, their EP and DHA a little bit by using fish oil. When you do that, I always recommend getting a source that is a CO2 extracted. So that's when I would recommend Body Bio's fish oil. It is a CO2 extracted. Most fish oil out there is a steam distilled process, and fish oil oxidizes at room temperature. So if you're consuming fish oil from a company that's done a steam distillation process, it's likely that it's oxidized. Now, is there still benefit to oxidized fish oil? I'm sure that there is some benefit. I just like to make sure people are getting the purest form because fish oil helps to make those resolvins and protectants. But not if it's oxidized. Really powerful anti-inflammatory mediators. I have everyone on butyrate. I just spoke in Las Vegas and did a talk on butyrate, and the benefits to butyrate supplementation are so profound. It felt like a panacea when I was researching, preparing for that presentation, because it has so many anti-inflammatory benefits, and then you have the benefits of it helping to support. It's definitely your number one product for helping to improve gut health. If anyone's using L-glutamine still, that is old school. You need to really Then B vitamins, I usually have them on Body Vitamin. The Body Bio CoQ10 I use. That CoQ10 is really important for helping to support mitochondria. Acids, so that people are getting in those amino acids. Even if people are eating animal protein, a lot of people are not breaking down their protein into amino acids. And so I like to top them up a little bit with a pure amino acid formula. And then I always use the Body Bio liquid minerals, the Body Bio Elite, which is an electrolyte formula, just because our soil is so depleted. And even if you're eating a really nutrient dense whole food, organically grown diet, I just see mineral deficiencies across the board.
Yeah, totally.
Then I support fat digestion using the TEDCA and also ox bile. And I'm not dogmatic about a mild ketogenic diet, but I like people to really focus on lowering their carbohydrates, increasing their bioactive lipids and animal protein, while also increasing the quantity of phytonutrients that they are taking in. So in terms of diet, more of a paleo style diet, paleo autoimmune and low histamine is a branch of that. Ketogenic diet, GAPS diet, SCT diet, again, we always want to personalize it. I never do a one size fits all dietary approach. We always start with a certain template and then work with the individual and figure out what works best for them.
Because we're all individuals. We need specific things based on what our cells need. Do you do any specific testing to see the function of the fatty acids in the system, how the cholesterol, et cetera?
Yeah, so we do In the clinic, Dr. Hoffman does the epigenetic IgL test out of Germany on almost every patient, and we always do the body biofatty acid test. That fatty acid test is through the Johns Hopkins University. It is the most comprehensive gold standard fatty acid test on the market. So it's going to show you everything from renegade fats, odd chain fats, transomers, very long chain fats, to a myelination index. It shows you the fluidity of the cell. It shows you a PR index, an MR index, your linoleic acid profile, your alpha linolenic acid profile, and all the downstream metabolites, and also an entire fatty acid, every single fatty acid in the body. So it is a really, I get so excited every time I get the opportunity to look at someone's fatty acid test.
You're like, you. Yeah.
So we do that because you see all these people, everyone's been told fish oil, fish oil, fish oil, it's anti-inflammatory, supplement with fish oil. And there is a lot of research that supports fish oil supplementation, but when you see fatty acid tests, we know that EPA and DHA and linoleic acid, they compete for the same delta desaturase enzyme. So the higher you dose that EPA and DHA, the more you're suppressing LA. So people with really discombobulated fatty acid tests with extremely high EPA and DHA and really suppressed LA. And we need, LA is the main fatty acid that makes up the capillaries.
Right.
And LA is needed, it makes up 80% of the cardiolipin. And LA, we need that fatty acid to build myelin and support myelin. So anybody that has ever told you to avoid linoleic acid, just put your earmuffs on and remember that they're not differentiating between that pure, unadulterated form of that beautiful polyunsaturated fat that is essential to our health, and adulterated, damaged, heated polyunsaturated fats that, again, are rife in our food system.
Yeah, this is true. And I love that comprehensive test that you talked about, because I think people don't understand the extensive ability that we have to see what's going on in the inside of our body. And I think that's the next, phase that we're moving into. It's where we can actually see in, we can do epigenetic testing, we can do DNA testing, we can test the fatty acids in the system, all these different things that allow us to see deeper into how the body's working. And it's not just like a CBC, just testing a blood panel. That gives us like a little tiny snapshot. I'm like, I use it. I'm like, this is what you are doing today, but let's see way deeper, which I like using some other tests that give a lot more information, which I think is really key. And okay, so we have that aspect of the nutrients, and you talked about all of those, which are so great. I loved it. And you wanted me to remind you to go back and talk about the GLA. So I'm doing that now.
Or the LA again.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I kind of touched on it. I'm really passionate about helping people to understand. And this, no disrespect to anybody that has said this, but I see, I can't even tell you how many times I have seen posts on Instagram or blog posts of health enthusiasts or practitioners telling their audience to avoid linoleic acid, avoid an essential fatty acid.
Right.
So I just really feel it's important to correct that information. And it's not about avoiding linoleic acid. It's about making sure that you're getting that essential fatty acid from raw, pure sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds, or making seed cream, or you're using the body biobalance oil for your source of LA and ALA, or you're getting a really high quality hemp seed oil that's been cold pressed, or black cumin seed oil has a beautiful LA profile, or sea buckthorn oil. So it's about sourcing. It's about finding really high quality sources of these beautiful oils that contain the fatty acids composition that are ideal for our bodies. Again, I always say you never want to eat anything out of a package, a box, a bag. If you see sunflower, safflower, soybean, corn, cottonseed, or canola oil, or peanut oil on a package, on a bag, in a restaurant, yes, put it back, because that is damaging on a cellular level. That is probably the worst assault that you could do to your body, because it's not like eating a bag of Skittles where you are burning off, you can burn off the chemicals and the preservatives and the toxins and the colors and the glucose. But when you're eating damaged fats, those are becoming part of who you are.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. It's so true. People don't, one, they don't have the training or knowledge to read labels. That's something I'm always helping patients learn about. What do the aspects of labels even mean? But again, just like shopping on the outside, like you mentioned, having all those wonderful fruits and vegetables, if we can stay on those, we're not even consuming the fats that are damaging our cells.
Yeah. Yeah. If that was one change that people made, they were just really neurotic about making sure they avoided any of those contaminated oils. I think that that would significantly improve health,
Mm-hmm.
significantly, because they're even just with when I'm in my own little bubble right at home. I live on my own. I work on my own. All my friends are in this field, everyone that I spend time with. So I forget what the real world is like, where people are, everything that they consume contains canola oil or safflower oil, because they're eating, the majority of their diet is coming from packaged processed foods, like foods
Right.
made in the lab. So not only are you're not, food is information. Food is information. And you're not providing your body with the information that it needs when you're eating foods that are processed and packaged. The body doesn't recognize that as food. And then
Right.
you're on top of that, you're assaulting the system with these really damaged polyunsaturated fats. So that's just what I want to make really clear to people. It's not about avoiding linoleic acid. If you avoid linoleic acid, you are not going to get the health outcomes that you want. And I see that all the time clinically. And I
Mm-hmm.
was a prime example of that. Mega dosing on fish oil, avoiding, this was long ago, avoiding linoleic acid because I was told it was bad. And what happened? I was demyelinating. So if I
Mm,
didn't catch that on that fatty acid test, who knows what that would have led down the road
right.
to MS.
Yeah, yeah. And it can be so damaging to your system. And like you said, it's like the knowledge from one point of view has completely changed over time, or the bad information was given out in the beginning. And the only way that we can help people learn is through like things like this, through podcasts, right? And through TED Talks, and through you, as you were mentioning, you just spoke in Las Vegas, informing the health of the, or the people, how to empower themselves through the correct knowledge of health. And Google is not a good source of information. Yeah. It's like, no, it's so tainted with, I tell my patients, like, please don't research things on Google. Come to me and ask me so that I can either research it for you in the right arenas, or I can help guide you to the right sources. Because there's just so much information out there now, which is in one way really great for us to have a lot of information. It's exciting, but it can also be overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah, a lot, and hard to find the truth too when there's so
Mhm.
much information. It's like a sea of information, and then you
Right.
gotta find this little tiny island of truth. And we all have, there are many areas that I have zero knowledge about, zero. And we all have this little niche area of expertise, and so it's going to those people to find your information and really seeking those experts. It's who do I talk to when I want to learn about Alzheimer's disease or plasmalogens? Go to Dr. Goodenow, because he is the world leading expert on cell membranes and plasmalogens and understanding how to treat and beat Alzheimer's disease. I wouldn't be looking on Google, because what would I find? There's no cure.
Right, right. Yes.
It's about getting rid of the amyloid plaque or whatever they say about Alzheimer's.
Right.
So it's really encouraging people to find those experts that are really experts in their field and have
Right.
studied it, and they're giving information based on the research.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really key component. And there are a lot of experts out there who really want to share their knowledge. It's like their place and passion, and finding them is
Yeah.
easy and fun. Just that's the exciting thing about Google is that you can research where the experts are, follow them on social media, or attend their talks, or things like that. So you're right. There's lots of ways to find the experts and to soak in their knowledge like a big sponge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, okay. As we're wrapping up things today, Justine, I'd love for you to talk about your new cookbook that you have coming out.
Oh, my new cookbook that I've been working on for years. I can't even tell you how many messages I get a week. When is your cookbook coming out? Dr. Hoffman and I have been working on a cookbook. Dr. Hoffman more the content. Because I am a therapeutic chef and have worked with mast cell activation syndrome and histamine intolerance for so many years, and am also somebody that suffers with mast cell activation syndrome, I have really developed and honed skills in the kitchen to be able to cook delicious meals that fit that dietary template that supports that condition. So it will be paleo, autoimmune, low histamine. And all the recipes in there will be based on that template. So no grains, no beans, no legumes, no eggs, no sugar, no shellfish, no nightshades, no nuts, no seeds. But lots and lots of nutrient-dense plant foods and animal proteins that are put together in a combination of flavors that just taste really delicious. So that will be coming. I can never talk about mast cell activation syndrome, histamine intolerance, mold illness, Lyme without directing people to Dr. Hoffman's website, his blog. He has so much amazing content on his website for potential patients or people that are just wanting to learn more. So speaking of experts and finding those experts, he is one of them. And then just directing people over to Body Bio to stock up on their amazing product line that really helps to support the foundation of our health.
Oh, that's great. I can't wait to see your cookbook. We'll have to have you back on to make a dish or something like that. That would be really fun. And what's your website? Can you, that's the justinestenger.ca, right, for Canada?
Yes, and hopefully I will have that over to a .com soon, but for now it is www.justinestenger.ca. I'm also on Instagram at Justine Stenger. I do a lot on Instagram around cell membrane medicine, mast cell activation syndrome. So if anybody wants to follow me, you can find me there.
Great. That's awesome. And one last question as we're wrapping up today. If you had an unlimited budget, what would you do right now to have the biggest impact on the planet?
I better say, I wanted to say I better not say, because I better keep this.
You can say whatever you want to say. Yeah, say what comes from your heart. You should say what you want.
I probably would provide every single household with Body Bio's phospholipid complex and a farmer's market grocery.
Great. What? Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Having that whole foods, like you talked about, the organic, the foods of the rainbow, and essential fatty acids, those oils that we need are so key. So that's great. I love it. That's great. We could do that. We could totally do that. Oh, thank you, Justine. It's been a wonderful conversation. I loved having you on the show, and I can't wait to share it with everyone around the world.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.